They're showing a different sort of style using the laptop up here with the TV. Usually what you see from an eyes of the opposition or tactical breakdown, but there's rooms being used, and so I'm hoping that the Wi-Fi connection is strong enough that you can hear me, see me. I mean, hearing me is the main thing. Seeing me isn't that much of a big deal. But you're here to have a chat about, obviously, our summer window, and now the European window has closed. I think it's a good opportunity to look and evaluate Arsenal's summer transfer window, both the ins and the outs. And a little bit of a secret, or not so much of a secret, because now it's out there, that Arsenal really only spent around £10 million this summer. That's net, by the way, with those that were tweeting saying we've actually spent 45 million. Yes, I know that's how much we've spent, but in terms of net and how much we've made, it's a really, really interesting figure. Thank you ever so much to the people that are tuning in live. I can see all of you in our live chat. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. If you're enjoying our series, please give them a like. Please subscribe if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. And please do go check out the Tactical Breakdown show that I, Graham and Drew conducted yesterday. Is out there of the North London derby discussing loads. The link is in the description, so please do and go check that out. But other than that, thank you ever so much for everyone that's tuning in our live chat, and we'll see you and discuss with you throughout the show. So let's get straight into things and talk about what we're here, which is Arsenal's summer window basically arriving at the figure of about £10 million. Now, you should be able to see on your screen right about now the Football London website, which is showing you on the screen the net spend of Arsenal across the summer based on our incomings and our outgoings. So we have a look at what we did this summer. You can see there, Gabriel Martinelli, £6 million signing from Ituano. Danny Ceballos was about a £3.7 million loan fee from Real Madrid. William Saliba only spent about 4.1 million, which is obviously going to rise to around 27 across his 5-year contract. Nicolas Pepe, £72 million signing, but only 20 million of that is done this summer. Celtic did hold out for that whole £25 million in basically upfront fees, which was £25 million in total. And David Luiz, £8 million, bit of a bargain, but was all paid up front. So around £66.8 million is guaranteed to be spent this summer, and in total across their contract lengths could rise to £141 million across that. Then if we look towards what was the outs, David Ospina went to Napoli for £3 million. Javier Amechi, 2.25 million. Christian Bielik to Derby County went for 7.5, potentially rising to 10 million. Takuma Asano went to Partizan Belgrade for just a single £1 million. Laurent Koscielny went to Bordeaux for 4.6. Carl Jenkinson to Nottingham Forest for 2 million. Dominic Thompson, the youngster, went to Brentford for 3 million, potentially rising to 4. Eddie Nketiah was a £2 million loan fee, was a decent fee for that. I wasn't aware of that before reading this article. And Alex Iwobi went for 28 million this summer, which could rise to a possible 35 million pounds. And Nacho Monreal to Real Sociedad, 250,000. Mohamed El Neni to Besiktas, 18 million pound option is there if permanent move is triggered. 16.3 million pound option. I wasn't even aware that there was an option for Besiktas to buy El Neni. Whether that happens or not, we're just going to have to wait and see. Henrik Mkhitaryan to Roma, a £2.8 million loan fee, and there is a possible option, it seems, if he's supposedly to play 25 games, which of course means he'll only play 24. Then we'll see that come in. But that's a 56.4 million guaranteed so far this summer, which is really, really interesting when you put all those together. That doesn't include the Besiktas Mohamed El Neni deal, but it could rise potentially to 64.9 million if all of those are agreed and met and those clauses are met. So for me, this is a really, really, really intriguing sort of way to look at things. It's going to be intriguing to see how Arsenal use this come January. I'm intrigued to see what some of you guys are saying in our live chat. I hope that you can hear me. So far, for some reason, it's not coming up on my laptop here, your comments, which is a bit frustrating, but I've got it on my phone, so I can see you. So hello, Carl Halberg, Patrick Kubia, thank you for tuning in. Ben Harrop, thank you ever so much. Everyone that's tuning in. Edward Denham says, are you planning to do a video of Hugh Wizzy? I'm sure that will come up at some point. Amici, they didn't forget Amici Manoj. Amici is there on the screen for you. You should be able to see it. He's right at the top, Javier Amici. £2.25 million he went to Hamburg for. So overall, when we look at things and how we did this, bringing in the potential that we did, bringing in Martinelli, Ceballos, Saliba, Pepe, Tierney, Luiz, All of these were really fantastic signings, and Arsenal managed to do it on. We were told so many times, £45 million was Arsenal's budget this summer. That's how much we could spend, and that was met with huge criticism and huge worry from a lot of Arsenal fans, effectively saying that no, that isn't good enough, and we're Arsenal Football Club, and we need to be spending more than that if we're able to compete. Now, I think we can all agree that what Arsenal have done on their budget, both incomings and outgoings, is incredible. If you take away the Iwobi deal, because the Iwobi deal is sort of the reason why this video is even able to be made around £10 million, because that 35 million that it could rise to means that if that hadn't have happened, we would have been at that £45 million budget. Because Iwobi went, we then were able to bring in even more money. He went because at the time, Henrik Mkhitaryan's deal and possible outgoings of Henrik Mkhitaryan wasn't abundantly clear if that would happen or not. Obviously, it has now happened, and he has moved to Roma on loan for a season. But at the time where Iwobi was basically courted by Everton, we didn't know if Henrik Mkhitaryan was going to be at the club this season. We didn't know if anyone was going to come in for him. And so when you get an offer of that amount of money, I don't think that's something you can necessarily say no to. Edward Dennis says, why didn't we sign Eriksen? He's a good backup to Ceballos. I think that Eriksen, I don't think ever they would have thought about selling us Eriksen in the summer. And he's obviously going for a free next summer, which is going to be intriguing to see where he goes. John P. says, so if we pay someone 35 million to take Mustafi, we are still on budget to do it. Fantastic. If we actually pay someone to take Mustafi, we're still on budget. Cole Halberg says, since he didn't leave this summer, how do you solve a problem like Mustafi? Personally, I trust him to do a job in the Europa League and against cup teams like Forest. Again, his statistics are very good. It's just those errors that he makes which are really frustrating for a lot of people. When it comes to our budget, though, the fact that we're doing 10 million, let's actually take this back a second and talk about the main thing being how good Raul Sanllehi, who was in obviously the thumbnail for this video, has done this summer. We've brought him in. He's done the deals. He's gone out to other clubs and made connections and got out there and talked to people and got these deals over the line, not just in a way in which we get good players in, but in a way in which it suits Arsenal's transfer budget, in a way in which we can then operate later on in the season and get some deals done if we need to. If you think back to the 2018-19 season, January was a really, really tough time for Arsenal. We weren't able to make any permanent signings. We were only able to do loan deals, and that obviously meant bringing in Denis Suarez, who barely played any minutes and wasn't able to have any sort of impact on any game that he played in because he just wasn't of the quality that Arsenal needed to back them up. And that was really the key reason for me why we didn't achieve our targets towards the end of the season. Because our team was flagging, because our team was fatigued towards the end of the season, those games against Crystal Palace, those games against Brighton, where we dropped points at home when we didn't need to and cost us Champions League qualification and ultimately led to our Europa League final defeat as well, was because we just felt towards the end of the season we put so much in and we just didn't have the mentality to keep us going. We didn't have the depth, we didn't have the rotation available to us. And because of that lack of investment in January not being available to us, we weren't able to increase the squad quality, and it meant that ultimately we couldn't achieve our goals. Now, what we're doing differently this season is we're seeing Arsenal be a lot more astute with their business. We're able to conduct transfers and bring players in whilst on a budget, and we're able to do that by making the deal structured. We pay so much now and then so much down the length of their contract. And of course, there'll also be some clauses in those deals, which mean only if they achieve certain things will we pay the clubs the full fee that was agreed. You've also got to consider the fact that we've sold players really instinctively. You look back to previous seasons, how silly Arsenal have been with the money that they have got from players that they've sold. They've let youngsters go for absolutely nothing. And this season, we're seeing the likes of Dominic Thompson possibly make £4 million for Arsenal, a player that ultimately, and no disrespect to the guy, but a lot of Arsenal fans, even some of the really, really hardcore fans, may not have even known too much about Dominic Thompson. And yet we've sold a youngster for a lot of money that can be recouped and be reinvested, whether it's a loan deal, whether it's for wages, and it's ultimately really, really good. And the wages is something else that we need to talk about. If we go back to the article and we actually look at who we sold and we have a look at the players that were left, those players were on some really, really high wages. David Ospina was on a decent wage. Laurent Koscielny, decent wage. Cole Jenkinson was around £50,000. If you remember that old English core that we got. If you think about Alex Iwobi, very, very high wages that he would have been on. Monreal, decent wage. El Neni signed a new contract very recently. Mkhitaryan was on about £150,000 a week. And we've managed to secure a deal with Roma, which means that they'll be covering most of his wages. It's really, really great to see that we've got basically, I think, if you look at the figure, it's around 900 grand a week that we've managed to save. Yes, we've spent, and it means the money that we've spent on wages for new players is around the £400,000 mark, but that's a hell of a lot of wages that we can now use and save up around £10 million, that we've managed to save £10 million worth of wages just for Mkhitaryan for a year. £10 million is a hell of a lot of money that can be reinvested in January in players that we need. Now, tomorrow, because it is an international break, which means that these videos are going to have to be quite smart to what we talk about. Now, tomorrow I want to talk about our position in terms of defensive midfield. Now, I put a lot of tweets out yesterday about our defensive midfield and what it means and how different players are going to suit different areas and how I think other players need backup. And whether that happens or not is going to be key to how Arsenal set up their formations going through the season. Now, what that means is that we're going to have to play players in different positions. Torreira, for me, whilst I like Torreira a lot, I don't think he can play that CDM role on his own. I think he's someone who needs to have someone beside him, be it Guendouzi, be it Ceballos, who can be that extra creative force, that extra drive in the midfield, and give Torreira a little bit of security as well. For me, Xhaka is done. But I don't want to talk about too much because I want to save that for tomorrow's video. But what I'm talking about is that in January, we can now, or even the summer, we can invest in the areas that desperately need improvement. For me, I think we should be spending a lot of money, of course, in the centre-back area. We nearly managed to do that with Upamecano from RB Leipzig towards the end of the window. I would have really liked to see him come in. But if in January we can go out and invest heavily in that position, it would put us in good stead for the second half of the season. I also think that we still need to invest heavily in a top class, not above top class, a world-class central defensive midfielder. One that could even partner Lucas Torreira in that role, possibly in a 4-2-3-1, playing with those two deep line midfielders. I need someone that's going to come in, not make the amount of mistakes that Granit Xhaka does, but still has the passing quality that he does as well, because we need someone on the pitch like that. And by the business that we've done this summer, it means that we can definitely do that effectively. Let's see what some of you guys are saying in our chat at the moment. George's opinion says Xhaka can cost Unai his job. Android Phone, which is a very strange name, says that this shows Kroenke haven't really changed. They really could have bought without even touching their own money. I wouldn't say, I kind of disagree with it. I think it's very easy to turn around and now say that Arsenal haven't really invested because of how much money we've spent net-wise. But if you consider the fact that Alex Iwobi's deal to Everton wasn't really something that many people expected to happen this summer, and that meant that only spending 10 million is really a result of that deal going through. I don't think that we can be critical of the Kroenkes and a lack of investment, because we know all too well that in terms of net spend and how much FFP has an influence on us, we can't expect the Kroenkes to go into their pocket and chuck loads of money at the club. It simply doesn't work that way anymore, and you can't do that under FFP rules. You have to follow the rules and you have to abide by them. But ultimately, I think that we've now got a structure in place with Raul Sanllehi, with Edu, with Kajagal, with Husfami, and the negotiators and our scouting network, that we've now got a system in place which is going to invest cleverly and invest in a savvy way, which means that we can reinvest in the future. We don't hold down players for too long that don't need to be at the club. We can invest in youth. We can promote players like Saka, like Nelson, like Martinelli, and not block their paths with players like even Iwobi and Mkhitaryan. And we can focus on breeding these youngsters and bedding them in and making sure that we get them into a position where they're really competitive with the Arsenal side moving forwards. Let's see what some more of you guys are saying before we log off. Solo says Bielik was a DM. Yes, he was. And actually, if you watch some of the videos during the summer, I was much more of an advocate of seeing Bielik stay. I really would have liked to see Bielik given a chance this season. He wasn't. He's moved off to Derby, but he's gone for a really, really good amount of money. 7.5 million rising to 10 million, I think, is really, really good for us moving forwards. If we then look at Matthew de Souza, he says a key change that has happened. Arsenal are not quibbling about and playing huge agent fees. Now, obviously, the agent fees is something that with the Pepe deal, there was actually quite a large amount that going to agents, but it was the only really way that we could get the deal over the line in an effective way. If we look at Solo, he also says we should definitely keep Bielik. Getafix says that Torreira, Willock and Ceballos is our strongest midfield three in a 4-3-3. I think that we definitely need to see more creativity. If you watch the video that I did on the tactical breakdown of Arsenal 2, Spurs 2 in the North London derby with Graham and Drew, a big point from that video was looking at the disconnect between the front line and the midfield three, and the fact that we didn't really start with a creative player in that midfield like Ceballos or Ozil, meant that we ultimately lacked that connection from that front line and the midfield. Daniel says that we should swap Xhaka for Milinkovic-Savic. Lazio get a player similar to him, and Sergei gets to progress his career. Milinkovic-Savic is going to cost a hell of a lot of money if we were going to invest on him. But maybe we've now, with our business this summer, put ourselves in a position where we could compete for those type of signings. Sangara is a shout from Joe Jacob, obviously the Frenchman, very young player. He's definitely someone I think that could come in and do a really good job for us. I believe he's French. Correct me if I'm wrong. South London's Finest B says Xhaka's days are numbered. I understand that what he does and what you get. Partey, if he was available. Partey at Atletico Madrid is definitely someone I'm a huge fan of. Obviously, watching La Liga quite a lot. He's definitely someone that I would invest in if we had the money to do so, but I think he would cost a hell of a lot. But he's that destroyer type. That's someone that we need to come in and really influence the game by winning the ball back, being physical, and muscling players off the ball and winning back possession. That's something we desperately need, and ultimately someone that's not going to make too many mistakes. And I think Thomas Partey is definitely someone that does that job. Liam Goff says that we don't have an out-and-out CDM. Now, I've had a lot of debate with people about Lucas Torreira on Twitter yesterday. People say he's an out-and-out CDM, and I agree that he is a central defensive player. He's a deep line central midfielder. That's what he is, and he's a very, very good defensive midfield player. I just don't think that he has, in the Premier League, the ability to play on his own effectively with the players that we currently have. If he's going to play in that deeper role, he has to play next to someone, in my opinion, to get the best out of him. People complain that playing him further up the pitch. Now, if we signed a defensive midfielder that was a really top-class player that was to sit in front of a midfield two, I think Torreira could play in that midfield two, as long as you had someone of really, really good creativity next to him, like Ceballos, for instance. It means that you've got someone in Torreira who can win the ball further up the pitch. But what the problem is that you don't want to mimic what Chelsea did by playing Jorginho at the base with N'Golo Kante further ahead. What Kante did in that season under Sarri really wasn't what a lot of Chelsea fans wanted. It wasn't effective enough. Jorginho was fantastic at passing, but his defensive side of the game still wasn't what was necessary to sort of equate to what N'Golo Kante brought. Kante is the type of player, and he's good enough to play central defensive mid on his own, in my opinion, because I don't think Torreira is at the same level as Kante. But we need someone at that base that's better than Jorginho at tackling, but is still the same level of passing quality of that of Jorginho. If we can bring a player like that in, you can ask me for names, and I wouldn't be able to pick one off the top of my head right now. But if we're able to bring someone in of that quality, who's got defensive power of Kante combined with the passing of Jorginho, that for me transforms our midfield. It enables us to play Torreira slightly further up, who can then recover possession slightly further up the pitch. We can counter-attack more professionally, more effectively, and more positively. And it means you've then got the opportunity to play someone of much more creative ability next to Torreira, who's then used to link that midfield to the front line. And I think that's going to be really key for Arsenal moving forward and how we evolve this team moving forwards. Tyrone says Thomas Partey, definitely. Chris Giwa says Decore. I'm not sure about Decore. I think he's someone that's, again, not an out-and-out CDM, someone who's slightly more ahead of that in a more of a deep line midfield role rather than a sole DM on his own. Liam Goff says Decore is overrated. Get a Flick says, I wonder why Unai doesn't utilise Luiz's ability to ping it down a wing. With the pace of Alba and Pepe, it would give us faster breaks and force teams. Now, what I am going to talk about in tomorrow's video in terms of central defensive midfielders is the option that we already have at centre-back. There's two players that we have in the team that actually have played CDM for their clubs, and something that maybe we could use in a couple of games and try out in the Cup games, Europa League, etc. I am going to leave things there. We've been going for just under 20 minutes now. I really hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new with those notifications turned on. I'll see you again very, very soon tomorrow for that video talking about central defensive midfield and the system that we could play. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.